We're no strangers to raid. You know the rules, and so do I. Hello everyone, Bront, CatHerder here. We're having some fun talking Raid Shadow Legends, and I am never going to give you guys up, and I am never going to let you guys down with a wonderful video here. We are going to be talking about the mythical from Chimera. We are talking about Embrys the Anomally. He is a fun mythical, he is a free mythical, he is a nuker, and I wanted to kind of test him out, show you some builds ideas, put him through his paces, do some damage testing, show you a couple teams I've been working on with him, and just give you an idea of how amazing this guy is, because he is absolutely amazing. So do your Chimera and eventually you'll get him. And honestly, I'm actually really impressed on my free to play. I'm actually maybe a quarter of the way towards him, maybe a little more. So he's very accessible to even early game accounts, and I think end game accounts will get him pretty quickly. Like I said, I've got him on my main here, and I think he's a lot of fun. So let's talk about him. Let's go in and take a look at him. All right. So Embrys here is a mythical, and I think it's Embrys the Anomaly, so we'll go with that. He's pretty cool looking in this form. Definitely got the Knights Ref undead weird vibe here with the weird spine and stuff too. And then when you transform him into this alternate form, he is definitely got a old one Cthulhu-esque style monster executioner thingy what's it, and I like the design overall. He's got a great aesthetic. I like the color choices here. I think Raid does a great job with the visuals, but I think this is one of the ones they've done a really, really good job with. They really do knock it out of the park with the mythicals. So let's take a look at his kit. Now, he is a support in this form, and he's an HP-based damage dealer in his secondary form here. That is kind of a nice feature for him, because that means in things like Centranos, he qualifies as a force support, and he qualifies as a force HP champion, which means he's available on more teams in Centranos. So just from that alone, that gives him very, very good utility. It also helps for things like secret rooms. Now, secret rooms are usually less of an issue because they're significantly easier than most of the Centranos floors. But for early on, getting a mythical and being able to use him in more places is kind of nice. So it's definitely a nice feature. Overall, so his A1 attacks all enemies. He's got an AoE hit, destroys max HP by 3%, also increases the duration of one random debuff on all enemies by 1 turn. This effect cannot be resisted if any enemies have necrosis. So here's the thing, he plays off of this necrosis, which is kind of a slightly buffed poison that plays off of whether or not people are dying or not. So that's kind of his base mechanic here. And because he has abilities that cannot be resisted, you don't need a lot of accuracy on him. However, in his damage-based form, he does get additional damage based off of accuracy, and he does have abilities that still do require some accuracy, so it doesn't hurt to get some accuracy on him. You're already going to have a decent amount of natural accuracy if you're building a great haul up, and of course you also have the area bonuses as well that can add some stuff. Plus, some of your good pieces of gear may naturally have some accuracy on them as well. An accuracy banner doesn't hurt. Getting a little bit of accuracy on the amulet certainly doesn't hurt either, but he doesn't need to be dedicated high accuracy necessarily, because a lot of the stuff he does is going to be irresistible, either because of the necrosis or in some cases even outside of the necrosis. But, you know, increasing the duration of random debuff, not bad. It is an AoE, so that from that perspective, it's actually pretty nice. A2 here places True Fear debuff on all enemies for 1 turn and a 50% decrease attack on all enemies for 2 turns. These effects cannot be resisted by any necrosis stack enemies, and then gets an extra turn. So it's a 5-turn cooldown. It effectively becomes a 4-turn cooldown because it grants that extra turn. It lets everything else go 1 turn less of a cooldown, which is kind of nice. True Fear is an okay control. Decrease attack, generally not a bad debuff to have. And the fact that it's irresistible at any people that have necrosis is kind of nice. And the extra turn makes this a easy thing to do, even if you're not going to land it on particularly high resistance enemy. The A3 here, the Unmaking, is attacks all enemies, removes any stone skin buffs, and replaces them with True Fear debuffs. Now, Polarium has actually talked about this. Now, this used to bypass the 50% stone skin removal issue. It does not anymore. Polarium did kind of fix that, but it does bypass the accuracy check because it's a replacement, which apparently is how Polarium wants this to work. So my understanding of this, and in my testing, I have never seen an issue where it's been resisted. I've only seen an issue where Stone Skin just didn't get removed because Stone Skin. And then block debuffs will get replaced with block buffs. So he removes Stone Skin and block debuffs. Also removes any buffs positive affecting stats and replaces them with the mirrored stats. So basically, this doesn't need accuracy for most of what it does. It just does it. And this is very similar to what, what's his name? Amius does. So if you hate that Amius skill, well, this is Amius skill on a champion you can have. Then steals 5% of each target's turn meter for each buff converted into a debuff on this skill. This requires accuracy, but it is a steal, which is great because he gets extra turns, which is also good. Also decreases the turn meter of all enemies by 20%. So he steals a bunch of turn meter for buffs converted with the skill, and he then, on top of that, reduces turn meter by 20%. So he is a great control just on this particular skill alone, which means you do want him to be fairly fast, which means speed boots are really not optional on this champion. And honestly, you're going to be looking for speed on every piece you're going to put on him if you can. These effects cannot be resisted if the enemy has any necrosis stacks as well. Again, there's almost no resistance in this other than the steal turn meter and the turn meter reduction. But again, necrosis, not bad. And it does do a decent amount of damage. This is not a major nuke, but you might kill a champion with it, which gets you necrosis stacks, which is kind of nice. Finally, his passive over here, whenever an enemy is killed, places one necrosis stack on all other enemies. Necrosis stacks cannot be resisted or blocked. The only thing that does block them is Stone Skin. They actually can be blocked by Stone Skin. They cannot be blocked by anything else. And basically these work very similar to how the Viper Head works, where for every champion that is dead, there is a necrosis stack. And when you revive somebody, the necrosis stack goes away. So you get extra damage on somebody as long as somebody else is dead on their turn. This can add up. It's very nice. At the start of this turn and the end of this champion's turn, instantly activates any necrosis stacks on all enemies. So on this form, he is constantly pushing that necrosis down, which is nice. That's one way to wear down the enemy. I don't know if the poison blessing actually affects necrosis or not. I haven't had a chance to test it. I don't have a blessing for him. If it does, it means that this form is a viable damage dealing form just from this necrosis, because this form activates the necrosis as well. And finally, I didn't mention before, but he's got an aura, 35% HP in all battles. It's a standard HP aura for a mythical, which is pretty good. 35% is actually pretty good in all eras. So this, however, is the nuking form, and this is the form I really like, but I think the fact that there's really good synergy between these fourth forms is great. So we're going to go start with the passive first here. So basically, when this champion dies, reflects 50% of the fatal hit back to the attacker, including any surplus damage. Whenever an enemy is killed, places one necrosis stack on all enemies. Necrosis stacks cannot be resisted or blocked. Necrosis stacks cannot be removed by reviving dead allies. Does not apply to enemies. So basically, he does the necrosis stuff. He doesn't activate, but he does do that weird damage reflection if he dies, which is very nice. Active effect. If this champion is about to get killed by a fatal hit, preemptively on that hit, place a revive on death buff on them for 1 turn before the damage is taken. That is on a 5-turn cooldown that is not unbookable. So he has a stay alive mechanic, although he doesn't have a lot of turn meter as a result with that. And that's probably the only big downside to him, is he can die, revive with this stuff, and still get killed, CC'd, whatever else. But because it does cleanse him, because you revive on death cleanses you effectively because you die and you come back to life, there is that. Obviously anything that actually affects you, such as life drinker, will certainly hurt his max HP, which will hurt his damage a little bit. So there are ways to counter him, there are ways to wear him down, and this is not the best stay alive mechanic that I've seen on a champion, but it's a reasonable one, and it's definitely kept him in some fights where I wasn't sure he was going to stay in the fight. So got an A1 here. A1 places block revive, which is great in arena, and places an extra hit if the target has any necrosis stacks. So this is an absolute nuke if they have necrosis. If they don't have necrosis, it hits fairly hard, and then it does a block revive, which, you know, block revive is great, especially for your squishier Wukongs if they're bothering you. Embrys, block revive, you're done with them. Don't have to worry about it anymore. A2 attacks all enemies. This is his big nuke. Deals double damage to enemies whose accuracy is lower than this champion's accuracy, and deals 50% additional. Ignores 50% of each enemy's defense when their accuracy equal to or higher than this champion's accuracy. So he can do true damage if they're high accuracy champions, and he does double damage if they're low accuracy champions. Which is better? I have no idea. It is really kind of hard to test this. Either he has more accuracy or he doesn't. I could certainly possibly try to test to see which one he's going to be doing better than. Part of the problem is if you don't build him with accuracy, you might actually have more HP, so you might be doing more damage anyway, because while he does HP and accuracy based damage, it is definitely a little more weighted on that HP than that accuracy. Finally, he's got a swaps HP with an enemy if the target is a boss, fully restores this champion's destroyed max HP and heals his champion instead. Each time this skill is used, increase this champion's ignore defense effects by 10% when in their alternate form. So basically he gets a bunch of extra ignore defense, up to 50%, whenever he uses this as a skill, and then he gets an extra turn as well. So it's a 5-turn cooldown, bookable to 4, becomes a 3-turn cooldown, plus it means that this skill gets back to particularly well, so 4-turn cooldown, bookable to 3. You really would like this extra damage if you can with booking him. I'm going to actually run him through this entire test unbooked because I don't have a lot of mythic books, and I felt that that was a good way to kind of test to see how accessible he is for most people. So that is Embrys in a nutshell. This swap HP thing is something you might decide to do even if he has more HP than the enemy, because you still get that extra ignore defense, and that extra ignore defense can be pretty big, because he is capable of dealing true damage without Helm Smasher or Savage, which is actually pretty cool. That means you can build him in a couple different ways if you decide you don't want to, but we'll talk about that. Well, we'll move on to talking about that pretty quickly. Here are the masteries I decided to choose for him. There's a couple different options, and we'll kind of talk about all of them, but I'll highlight the ones that I think are really, really the best ones to go for, and then I'll talk about ones that I didn't pick, but I think certainly could be pickable. So obviously you want the crit rate, you want the crit damage. That's a pretty consistent one. You're going to want Helm Smasher just because he does already ignore a ton of defense, and yes, he can technically get up to ignoring 100% defense without Helm Smasher, but I think you're better off having Helm Smasher anyway, just because of the extra defense that ignores. Plus, there's opportunities for him to not ignore that 100% defense, because if he has higher accuracy than, or has one of the accuracy things basically doubles the damage instead, but Helm Smasher means you're ignoring the defense, which means it's going to increase the damage there as well. So I think Helm Smasher is just a better one overall as far as the damage is concerned. If you really wanted to go with something strange, you could certainly go with this extra 50 accuracy, but I don't think that adds as much damage as Helm Smasher would. You know, otherwise War Master is the way to go if you're looking for PvE stuff, but honestly, I just think Helm Smasher is just a better selection for you overall with him. It'll help you in PvP, and it might even help you still in PvE against some of the higher difficulty targets as well. I went down the support tree because the accuracy I still think is helpful, even if you're not going to use a lot of his debuffs. A little bit of accuracy goes a long way. So went here for the extra 20% here if you don't think it's cooldown. You could argue whether or not he wants this accuracy for each alive enemy. It's a little bit of extra accuracy, or if you want this arcane celerity. He has a couple of debuffs he puts up, but again, if you're using him as a nuker, he's not throwing up tons of debuffs. But what this would do is it gives you a chance to get an extra 10% turn meter boost if the enemy revives somebody and gets rid of, well, actually, I don't know if that counts as being got rid of. So if they get rid of the necrosis, when they revive the last person, that would be 3 chances for arcane celerity to trigger. So maybe that's not bad. I don't know. I'd have to actually test that to see which is better. It's an option. It's worth thinking about. I like Laura Steel. I think Laura Steel is just a good one to take overall. You could certainly argue that maybe Evil Eye would work okay, especially because he does have all the different AoEs, but that's a one shot and you're done with it. Whereas sometimes these extra stats can be very useful, and these can be extra things like extra HP for using Stone Skin, for example. They can be extra crit rate and crit damage depending on what type of damage set you're using for him. There's all kinds of things that this Laura Steel could be helpful with, and that's why I generally like it. You could maybe argue that Cycle of Magic is not a bad option either to reset his cooldowns. He does get extra turns regularly as well, so his cooldowns are not as bad as they look otherwise. So Cycle of Magic's not too bad. And finally, I went with Master Hexer. He puts up the decrease attack, and that's really the only thing that he does on this that would make a lot of sense with Master Hexer. But Sniper does absolutely nothing. Spirit Haste maybe could be useful. It means if people start dying on his team, he gets a little bit faster. So maybe you could talk about Spirit Haste over Master Hexer. That's kind of nitpicking a bit. I don't think Lasting Gifts is going to help because he doesn't buff himself much either way. So probably Spirit Haste or Master Hexer. It's really going to depend on what you're looking for the build. The same thing with whether or not you want Arcane Celerity or you want the Swarm Spitter here. I think both of them are very good options. Again, here on the offense, I decided to go with Shield Breaker because he doesn't really have a great way to ignore shields. I could certainly argue with Heart of Glory, but I suspect he might take some damage occasionally. I don't think Grim Resolve is a great option for him. So I just, maybe it's okay because he's under 50% occasionally because he might take some damage and he does have the Revive on Death. I kind of felt that this was probably the best one to go with. Ruthless Ambush, I don't think Ruthless Ambush is very good for him because I think you're going to do the first hit, which will count as Ruthless Ambush, with an ability that's not going to do a lot of damage if you're stripping Stone Skin off. If you end up not stripping Stone Skin off, then Ruthless Ambush will actually be pretty helpful because that his nuke will get additional 8% damage. But I generally find that Whirlwind of Death means that he starts to speed up as he kills people. So what ends up happening with this is you get more of an impending doom type scenario where he kills people, he puts the necrosis up, they start taking more damage, making it harder for them to recover that last downed person, or possibly making it a little less time limited for them so they could die. They're more likely to die sooner, and on top of that, you're going more turns, going faster as well, so you can speed up the death process, which is kind of what you're looking to do. Single out, generally pretty good overall, lets you kill people that have low HP, never a bad idea. You could certainly argue, well, not this one here, you could argue that Bring It Down, very good, inflicts damage when attacking targets of higher max HP. That means that your Tauruses, your Narcissus, some of those champions that might have high max HP are going to take more damage from him. He is an HP based champion, but there are plenty of builds that are going to have more HP than he is, and versus PvE, this is going to be an extra 6% pretty much on every ability you're going to ever use. I really like Cycle of Violence. He does do a ton of damage. He should do this 30% more on honestly most skills that do any damage of any kind. So Cycle of Violence has a chance to proc almost every time, getting him back to his skills again. I think that's very good. You could certainly argue that Wrath of the Slain is not too bad. In fact, if you went with Wrath of the Slain, I probably would lean into Spirit Haste. I think that's an interesting combo. If you have other controls, and to be fair, he does have some controls to work into this. Opportunist is not a bad option as well, because you do have the True Fears in his kit, so he could technically set himself up for Opportunist to add 12% more damage. So that's a reasonable argument for that, and I usually am not a huge fan of this one, but he can do it in his own kit, which I think is pretty cool. Bring It Down, damage inflicted by 6% when attacking targets with higher max HP. Mentioned that's a good one already. Methodical, he's going to use the A1 occasionally, especially because he's got the block damage. That's a good one. Kill Streak, just good because he's killing people, getting additional damage. Blood Shield, I don't think this is quite as good. It does put a shield up on him, but sometimes that shield's not great, but it is off of his max HP, so that's a chunky shield, so that's not too bad. And finally, not a big fan of this one because I'd rather he not get debuffed in the first place. So that's kind of what I would break down with the Masteries. I don't think the defense tree is really worth going for because he does get the extra damage on accuracy. I would rather get a little bit of extra accuracy just to get that little bit of extra damage. If I was going in defense, I would probably grab the resistance and then the crit damage, or the crit hit reduction for damage here. I would certainly think about rejuvenation because extra healing that he gets on himself is not too bad. Get yourself up here to delay death right behind my head, and maybe one of the counterattack ones that's right behind me might be okay in defense. But I think that something along these lines here with, again, maybe Evil Eye, maybe Cycle of Magic, maybe Spirit Haste, maybe going with Opportunist, maybe go with Wrath of the Slain as well. A couple different good options for you here. I mean, even Life Drinker, I don't hate Life Drinker. I don't think it's as useful in PvP, but Life Drinker on PvE damage dealers is amazing. It keeps people alive a lot longer. So it's not the worst thing to have grabbed either. You could certainly maybe argue rather than this if you think you're going to be one-shotting people mostly and you just want to make sure he stays alive. Again, plenty of interesting options. Don't just copy and paste. Think about how you're going to use him. Play around with it a little bit. You do have a free reset as well, so you can build with this and then try it out and say, maybe I don't like this and try something else later. As far as blessings are concerned, Lightning Cage is actually a pretty solid one for him. You don't mind having him in Stone Skin, so that'll help protect the Stone Skin a little bit more. And you get some extra damage with this Lightning Orb as well, based on max HP, so that's not too bad either. Heaven Cast, not horrible. You could certainly say Nature's Wrath is not too bad either, because he does put up a ton of debuffs. Nature's Wrath will certainly max his damage out pretty quickly, so Nature's Wrath may be the best all-around one for him. Brimstone, if you're going to go a lot of PvE and have a lot of accuracy on him, doesn't suck. Polymorph is certainly an option in the arena, although we're kind of moving beyond it. If you get a 6-star soul for him, Crushing Rend could be amazing for PvE content and give him a little bit of extra ignore defense. Not that it's not that 6% extra ignore defense is not huge, but it's not bad. Soul Reap, not too bad. Life Harvest, not too bad as well. You're punishing people for dying and you're punishing people for coming back in a Life Harvest. I think there are better champions for Life Harvest, however. I think I'd rather have a Soul Reap if I was going to go this route as well. Otherwise, pick what makes sense for you. I'm actually starting to like Nature's Wrath just in talking about it here. The extra damage based off of debuffs you place, since he is doing a bunch of debuffs on his first form. If you end up not using the first form much, this is certainly going to lose its luster just a little bit, but it's not that hard to max out. At level 3, it takes 4 debuffs to get you an 8% permanent damage boost. So it's not like Nature's Wrath is bad and something you'll never be able to use, even if you don't build his first form too often. As far as relics are concerned, you're again looking for relics. The Malefic Talon, I think, is actually really good on him just because the extra crit damage helps a lot, and he's got extra HP, so that's not too bad as well. Cat's Gaze is going to certainly help you a ton. The Wand of Submission certainly could be helpful to prevent it from being sheeped. There's all kinds of interesting, fun options. There's honestly, the relics, you're looking for either damage dealing or something that's going to keep him around alive or otherwise doing what you want him to do in the first place, and those are kind of the relics you're looking for. The build I've gone with is 4-piece lethal and 4-piece stone skin, and I actually have a refresh amulet on him as well because I had a really nice refresh amulet here. Now, is this the best gear I possibly could have on this account? Probably not. I did get some nice ascensions. I've got speed on my speed boots here. Got an HP chest here that's got HP % ascensions. Got some accuracy here as well. This was a really nice piece for him because I decided I wanted a little bit of accuracy. These could be better, but I only have so many really good crit damage gloves, and I didn't want to pull some of the best off of a couple champions. But he's honestly worth thinking about pulling the best of the best off of some of your champions. So this is not bad. I could maybe do better. I like the fact that this is mythical rolled at a crit rate. The defense, not quite as good. Would certainly prefer that on a defense-based champion, but he's already kind of tanky, so this makes him a little bit tankier, not too bad. Generally, all the ascensions are what I want, so I want crit damage ascension here, HP ascension here, speed ascension here. Got HP across the top. Got crit damage amulet here with crit damage ascension. HP ring. I wish this had more HP %, but again, it's usable, and it's one of the few rings I had. The rest of them were attack based, so that doesn't help too much. And, I was thinking about going no accuracy, but I have an accuracy, accuracy banner right here. I hit accuracy on the ascension, so I decided I wasn't going to complain about it too much. The substats, not great. Certainly would have liked this to have rolled either more into speed or gotten like HP % down here somewhere, but it's usable, and it's one of the few I had that on this account, so it made sense for me to use these. Now, what other builds might I think about? Well, he does have the stay alive mechanic, but that's only on his second form, so Stone Skin I think is something that's really kind of required to get to his second form, because it'll keep him alive long enough to get to his second form. Even if you end up using one of the extra turn things and then swapping over to their form, you don't need more than one turn of Stone Skin to probably keep him alive. Otherwise, you'd probably want like triple reaction down here. Maybe you could certainly go with Merciless, wouldn't be a bad option for you as well. You could maybe argue that like 4-piece Supersonic would be kind of interesting instead of Stone Skin to kind of jump in if somebody's taking a turn doing some extra boosting, something like that. And you could even argue that maybe you don't need the lethal because he already has other ways to ignore defense, enough so that maybe he doesn't actually need the lethal to be able to nuke as hard as he is. But for now, I'm going to go with it, particularly because I think with the stats that I've got, and we'll show you the total stats here right now. His HP could be a little bit higher. His defense is a little too high, not too high, but it's certainly there. Good crit damage though, little overkill on the crit rate. Again, sometimes you make compromises based on the pieces you find. I might be able to tweak it a little bit, but it was one of these things where in order to get closer to the 100% crit rate, I ended up losing stats in every other place as well. So you do what you can. But, and then of course he does have additional crit damage and HP in Form 2. So Form 1 is certainly a little tankier. You lose some defense into Form 2, you gain some HP, and I gained a little extra crit damage as well. You know, that's Embrys in a nutshell. Once I get a blessing for him, that is going to be huge as well, because even a 1-star blessing is an extra 10k HP. It's actually 11.5k HP. That is going to be so much extra damage, and that kind of ties into why mythicals really do need the blessings, which is honestly one of the reasons I really wish they would actually start putting a shop for mythicals, even if you only could buy them on a Sunday or some other way to maybe have mythicals show up once a week instead of a legendary or in addition to a legendary. I don't know. It would be nice to be able to buy mythical souls. There's enough mythicals in the game right now that this is something Polarium can work on solving, and I don't think it would be a huge amount of power creep. This is not a team I expect to lose to. This is not a team that has any sort of damage whatsoever, but this team has Stone Skin. I can tell you right now, there's a Stone Skin at least on that UDK. There might be Stone Skin on that Pythian as well. And of course, Mithrala has got all kinds of resistance, probably not in Stone Skin, but there is definitely Stone Skin on this team here. So I have actually found that Fabian makes a really, really good companion to Embrys. It is nice to be able to possibly let Fabian do some of the stripping before Embrys takes a turn. Not that Embrys's stripping is bad, but if Embrys can go immediately into his second form and do the nuke, and doesn't need to do the strip in the first place, that's one less turn you need to take to kill your enemies. But overall, this I find works very well. It also helps lock everybody out, so it gives me an interesting option as well. You need a speed champion really with a team like this. My Embrys is 250-ish speed, so he's not the fastest one. I like the aura of Carnage as well, plus I think Carnage and Embrys work very, very well together as well. Carnage powers up based on debuffs in his second form, so Embrys can place a ton of debuffs as well. So what can happen with this team is this team can actually take advantage of a more hybrid build like what I have for Embrys than normal. So either I have to strip off a bunch of Stone Skin, which is fine, and then I might be able to nuke down or at least do some damage and control with Carnage, or I may not have to strip it because Fabian might do the stripping in the first place, at which point in time he can slip over and just flat out nuke everybody as well. And meanwhile, if I kind of have to do the strip nuke type stuff, and maybe he gets a couple of debuffs out there, and maybe he does kill somebody and you get all this necrosis out there, well, all those debuffs help power up Carnage, and then Carnage can go into nuke mode and just absolutely obliterate the enemy as well. Plus, Carnage gives me some other fun options as well. So I think this team works particularly well. I've been playing with this team. I've been playing with a few other teams as well, but I think this is a fairly well-rounded team. Obviously, how accessible this is probably going to be more up to debate on whether or not you have a Siphi, although again, it's a speed booster, so you could certainly swap Arbiter in here if you'd rather versus Siphi. My Siphi just happens to be faster. And of course, whether or not you've gotten Carnage, but honestly, anybody and everybody can get Carnage with just a little bit of work and a little bit of time. How much time? It might take a year and a half, but again, it might take a year and a half to get Embrys as well, depending on how fast you're getting them from there. So I think this is a pretty good team. We're going to take a look at it. I'll walk it through manually. So this UDK doesn't have Stone Skin, but Pythian does. Weird, but whatever. So, all right. So we'll do the strip with Fabian. That actually managed to strip the Stone Skin. That is good. So what we will do is this gives us an extra turn. So we will do this. We got a couple of debuffs out there that doesn't hurt. Swap him over. Do the life change right here. So we will swap over the life here. It doesn't really matter who we do it to. We'll do it to Arbiter. Now we've got an extra 10% ignore defense, and then we will do his big nuke. And there we go. Hit pretty hard. Did not kill absolutely everybody, but hit pretty hard. We got Arbiter. We have almost killed Mithrala, and Pythian's not in great shape, but Pythian is feared. Pythian has the necrosis on him as well. So as long as they can't cleanse this necrosis, they're going to start taking damage every time they take a turn. And in fact, if we're really, really worried about it, we can try to sleep somebody here. This is the one problem that necrosis does have with poisons and sleep. Poisons will wake somebody up from sleep before they lose their turn due to sleep. So it's not going to actually kill anybody. It doesn't really matter because it's going to hit UDK anyway. And Fabian got his turn here. So here's definitely one of the fun things we can do with Carnage now. Do we have enough? Yeah, we've got enough debuffs out there. So we'll swap over to Carnage, and Carnage will get the final kill. And of course, we did not kill UDK, but that's fine because he's under the under that there. Okay, good news is he's now got 3 stacks necrosis, so this A1 should absolutely do a ton of damage. And it does okay damage. Again, this is why I kind of think pairing him with an extra damage dealer is good. He does nuke. He nukes fairly hard, but he's clearly not doing so much damage that he is an end-all nuker, that he's the only nuker you need to have on your team. Does enough damage to get the job done, but still a bit of a problem. So let me go find a more stone skin heavy team, and I'll be right back. Actually, this is a good one here. This should have plenty of stone skin. This will give us an Ancora, who will make us a bit of a challenge as well. Plus, we'll be going up against the Narcissus, so I think this will be an interesting team fight. So let's see how we do. Hopefully, we are going to be faster than the other team. I think with Carnage's aura combined with my Siphi, I think we're MK. And yep, okay, so they've got stone skin. We are currently faster, and Siphi is going to get the increased speed, the 10% speed boost. We don't get the stone skin stripped. That is good. We did get kind of locked out. Definitely a little more annoying. All right, so we have been locked out in this first form, but they do not have any more non-stone skin stuff up, so we will swap to the other form. Again, I will do the health swap. We'll do it with you. It doesn't really matter because your guys are both maxed HP out. And then we attack, and not quite dead. So this could be worse. Who don't I want? I probably can't sleep Narcissus because of you, so we'll sleep you instead. Can we... Let's see if I can lock you out a little more. Okay. There's his revive on death, so that's great. Let's lock you out. Look at that. So there was the reflect kill, which is very nice. You can see the damage. It happens every time he dies. So there we go. Necrosis saves the day, got a bunch of kills, and we turned something that could have easily been a defeat into victory, which is pretty cool. So let's do just a flat out damage test just to kind of give you an idea of how much damage he actually does. But that hopefully should wrap up the video. All right, before we actually go to the damage test, I do want to do one more fight where we can actually try to do the stone skin strip. So in fact, I am going to change this team out for Arbiter as well. So now we've got a bunch of speed champions. In fact, you know what? I'm going to go with, where are you? Ostrid. All right, so I'm going to go with this instead because this gives us even more advantage with the aura, because she's got the 6-star blessing here, so that's going to give us a bunch of extra speed. My Ostrid's actually pretty similar in speed to my RB. So let's go test this out and see if we can strip some stone skin. Yep, there are some stone skin champions. All right, so we get that increased speed here, get more increased speed here, which is great. Let's lock a couple people out. I'm not worried about the decreased turn meter. Oh, I think probably it is going to trigger on you. That's fine. All right, so we've got the stone skin strip here. I think actually what I'm going to do first is I am going to do this for the True Fear and the decreased attack. Didn't work particularly well, but it was a free extra turn. Get the strip right there. All right, so that was not resisted, you'll notice. That was simply just did not get pulled because of the way that stone skin works. So, all right, we'll sleep you. And, all right, if I hit you, you want extra revive. And there we go. So that kind of shows you the power of him stripping stone skin. Obviously, I could have gone about that fight a little bit better to maybe have won, but I just wanted to show the stripping of the stone skin. Works pretty well. He didn't have a ton of accuracy, and he didn't need a ton of accuracy, so it worked pretty well. All right, so we're going to go in here for the damage test here. Honestly, I shouldn't give him his aura because that's cheating. Generally, I give people a speed aura. I don't really have a speed champion up here. Let's pull a speed champion in here quickly. There we go. So we got a speed aura here just to make sure we got some speed. Got a bunch of speed champions. We've got the decrease defense and weaken. He does, because he's an HP damage dealer, he doesn't get anything extra from increased attack or increased defense, which is fine. So let's go take him on to floor 1 and see what we're going to do. Turn off auto here. Get all the extra turn meter just to have it. Get that decreased defense. And weaken out there. It gives you a little extra turn meter. All right, so we've got his fears and whatever else. Because those are placed, it doesn't matter. He's not going to weak hit, so that's kind of nice. So let's slow this down, and we're going to see how much damage he does on his base form with that strip that's also an attack. So ignoring the weak hit on one of the max fearmongers, maybe 50k damage. Not absolutely amazing, especially for someone that's kind of built for damage. But again, this is not his damage form, so those multipliers are not particularly great. So let's go take him. Well, you know, let's continue here. Let's just go see how much damage his A1 does. Turn this back up to 2x quickly. All right, so let's just take a look at this A1 while we're at it here. We've got all the decreased defense and weaken up as well. And hey, his A1 actually does some pretty decent damage. That was on par with his other damage abilities. So not too bad. So that was actually maybe a little more damage than his Strip Stone Skin with that A1 on this form. So I'm not going to say that that's not too bad, especially since I think by default he doesn't like to change forms. So if you just have him on auto and you throw him in a team, he'll A1 down the wave when he's not doing his other abilities. So not too bad. All right, let's reset this and try his second form. All right, so let's change over to a second form. And then, let's do the HP exchange. So, interestingly enough, the swaps HP did not actually swap HP when somebody had less HP than him. So it will only swap HP if he's got low HP and they have high, interestingly enough. So, all right, let's see how much this smacks. So we have this on 1x. This is his big nuke ability right here. 180k for the Helm Smasher proc on one of them. It was 120, 140 on some of the other ones. Very, very good damage. We did get a weak hit here. Again, not surprising. This is a bad affinity for there. I have definitely seen better damage dealers as far as damage is concerned, but it's not bad overall. So let's get back and check his A1. All right, so we'll change forms. We'll do that health swap again. And then A1. So we'll A1 this one. 94k, and he'll double hit with that if they're under necrosis. So not a bad A1. So is this major damage? Well, you know what? Let's take Thor into the same scenario. Now, Thor is going to get increased attack. So from that case, well, you know what? I'll make sure Thor doesn't get increased attack. We'll try this with Thor. All right, so we got Thor here in this team. No increased attack. We got everything else, for the most part, the same. He'll get a bunch of turn meter boost. And we're not going to try every one of Thor's abilities. This is just for reference. We're going to try his A3, which is not his big nuke, but it's the most consistent nuke because it's the one that does the same damage on every hit. And to be fair, keep in mind that we are talking about PvE here. He does have these two guys he could have weak hit against that Thor is not going to. And again, my Thor is built for damage with accuracy, so similar-ish build. He's not built in Stone Skin, so he doesn't have that restriction on him as well. And okay, Thor did 240k to the one for the best. There's 230, 240. Yeah, Thor does a little more damage, but you get a lot of really good utility out of Embrys, plus that ability to strip Stone Skin. Again, you get the additional survivability, you get a block revive, you get a bunch of other stuff as well. So you're getting a lot of stuff in exchange for maybe a little less amount of damage. Plus, as an HP-based damage dealer, and again, my Thor does have a 5-star blessing, so keep that in mind as well. But as an HP-based damage dealer, he's super tanky as well in Arena, so that's not to be dismissed either. So that's Embrys the Anomaly in a nutshell. Is he a great champion? Well, he's actually very good. I think he will change the meta a little bit because I think he is a reasonable counter to Stone Skin that will start to become more and more accessible as people play Chimera. So from that end, I think he's going to be a good champion for the game. He also doesn't feel like he's excessively overpowered. As you can see, without a soul, he was doing good-ish damage, but he wasn't doing such crazy damage that it was like, man, he's the best damage dealer in the game and you absolutely have to build him for damage. That also means that his support form could be an interesting form to max out a bit. You go much more into speed, you don't go as much into the crit damage, and you just mostly milk that first form and hope that your other damage dealers can kill some people so you can get those Acrosis stacks out and start triggering them as well. So that's Embrys again, in a nutshell. Decent champion, a lot of good utility. I like the all AoE hit on one of the forms. Both forms seem to play well with each other, and I don't feel like I missed out on a lot on building him for mostly damage while getting a little bit of accuracy. I think overall the kit just feels kind of good. But, you know, maybe I need to bulk him up a bit more. Maybe my gear was not the greatest in the world. Let me know what you think. Do you like this champion? Do you think he's particularly good? Do you think I did a good test of him? Is there anything you think I could have done a little bit better? Let me know. I do appreciate your comments down below. I want to thank you guys all for wishing me some wonderful health because of some health concerns lately. We are still working on it, but it looks like I am in the clear for the most dangerous part of that, which is absolutely great. So hopefully I can focus again on making great videos for you guys and, you know, having some fun playing Raid Shadow Legends. So hit that like button, hit that subscribe button if you want to see more content like this. I love doing guides, I love doing deep dives, I love breaking down champions, and I love making videos for you guys because you guys are absolutely awesome. One of the best communities in Raid, which is a great community in the first place. So, hey, until the next video, I'm Bront CatHerder.